being a strong leader is all about building relationships and earning trust. And that doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, it takes intention. And as hard as it is to get that trust, you can lose it in an instant. And it's much harder to rebuild it once it's been damaged. So being the chief news officer means I'm the corporate executive responsible for all of our content strategy and operations in all of these communities, large and small. That means I have the privilege of leading more than 850 journalists who are focused on helping us to build a sustainable future for local news in the communities that we serve. And building that sustainable future for local journalism is my purpose. As some people like to say, it's my why. It's why I get up in the morning. It's what drives me forward every day, even on the hard ones. It's what keeps me up at night worrying about how we're going to get there. But it's the thing that that really consumes my waking thoughts and a lot of my energy. I believe that local news is the heartbeat of a healthy community. It serves as a bridge between the government and the governed, providing citizens with information that they need to be engaged and informed participants in the democratic process. That is critical. It's something that needs to happen. Local journalists are there to hold power to account and to connect people to each other in their community. And as you can tell, I'm passionate about this mission. I feel it down deep in my bones. And I think that that passion for the mission is one of the keys to whatever success I've had in my career as a leader. I'm really grateful to have had this opportunity to tell you a little bit about my leadership journey and all that I've learned along the way. As you can tell, I've had a bit of an unconventional path, and I share that because I know that there's a lot of people who struggle to see themselves in leadership roles. They feel the imposter syndrome. They hear the voice in their ear telling them that they aren't enough. My journey as a single mother who had to make her own way in life taught me the power of resilience. It would have been so much easier for me just to keep changing those diapers. And there were plenty of times that I just wanted to throw in the towel and give up. But I knew that I had bigger things in store for myself and that I owed it to my son to pursue them. And once I found my purpose and my mission and my passion, I was able to apply that grit and resilience to my work. And in my experience, it's often the people who've had to overcome big challenges, big obstacles, who are able to become some of the best leaders. They develop a level of empathy and compassion and a drive to succeed that takes time and effort, but it doesn't mean it's easy. I know too many women who think that they have to check all of the boxes before they jump into a new challenge. I read an article recently that called it the perfectionism pitfall. They said that, we feel like we have to have done all of the things before we're ready to jump into the next thing. But I'm here to tell you, you need to trust your gut and know that most people learn by doing. You will never be 100% ready for any new challenge, but that doesn't mean that you can't get there. I'm here to tell you that no matter what your passion is, ignore that little voice that tells you you aren't enough, because you are enough. And you can learn the skills that you need to lead and to succeed.
Those limited moments. So when you are an intern, use your voice in the room. Say you have an internship and you're in an editorial meeting, right? And you might be thinking, I was there. I was an intern at CNN, and you're thinking, oh, I don't know. Do I see something? I have an opinion on this. You do. Quite often you have a perspective that newsroom needs, because you actually are seeing an issue or a story from a different angle that somebody else on the team might not be thinking about. So make sure that you step in there. You say, hey, I have a thought on this, and what about if we did it this way? Because there's a ton of value in making sure that we are getting in all voices in the newsroom. Look, we've all been in the room, in many rooms where we don't feel valued and we don't feel heard, and maybe you try and you get in there and you have something that you want to contribute, and I don't know, somebody speaks over you. Or my personal favorite is when you say something and then 5 minutes later somebody else says it, and then everybody in the room is like, oh my God, that's brilliant. And you're like, I said that minutes ago, right? So I think that can be, I get it. I feel you. It can be incredibly frustrating. I think this is not going to be the most satisfying answer, but some of it is patience and then to keep trying, and that you will find rooms where people will listen. And so when you do find somebody who can be that person, that can be the other person in the room who's like, who will build on your idea, who will elevate your voice, and will be the person 5 minutes later who says, hey, that was a great idea. Didn't you just hear, whoever just said it, right? Like, find the rooms where someone will build you up. And frankly, I don't know, maybe preset it with somebody, right? If you have an ally in the room, maybe somebody can help you to help buoy your point and help make sure that it's, find a leader, if you can find a manager who will listen. And that's not the same as always agreeing, right? Sometimes you may have the most spirited exchanges with a middle manager or an upper level manager about something that you might very well disagree. But the key thing is to find someone who will listen and wants to listen and wants to engage with you. And that will be an environment that you want to be in, because that is most likely a place where your voice can be heard. If people, the first step is seeing if somebody's listening. Sway in who's in the room. Hey, I'd really like to be a part of that room. I had a manager and leader and mentor for a very long time who, she knew I was like frustrated. I was not part of a conversation in leadership, and I just really felt like I deserved to be in there. And she guided me toward sort of patience, but also I knew on the flip side, she was also advocating for me to be in that room. And ultimately, when I ended up in the room, the one thing that she gave me as constructive advice to afterward was, now you're here, what are you going to say? What are you going to do? And so sometimes I do think we may get a little caught up in like, I want to be there, I want a seat at the table, but make sure that when you get it, that you have something to say and that you're ready to use your voice and you're willing to use your voice, because there are still rooms that we'll all be intimidated in, but you're in the room. Now, what are you going to say? So I think that's why I go back to, what is your message? What is your brand? What do you want to be known for in the world? How do you want to have an impact? What are the stories that matter to you if it's related to journalism?
And I will tell you, as a manager and as a leader in the newsroom, I see it all the time. And the comparisons that we do in newsrooms or in life in general can really set you back, both from like a mental point of view and just from a career point of view. Because, by the way, when you compare yourself with your colleague, 9 chances out of your 10, your colleague isn't telling you everything that's true. The message that I always throw out there is raise your hand. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. And when I say that, don't wait for somebody to ask you to do something. Raise your hand and say, hey, pick me for this assignment. Pick me to do this. I think too many times in this fast-paced world that we lived in, people will sit at their desks and say, oh, I know that, if they want me to do it, they're going to come ask me to do it. I had a conversation with somebody this week, and I said, you can create your own destiny to a certain extent in what we do, but we move so fast. There's so much happening all the time. The decision makers, if you will, are looking for people to make those decisions for them. So I would say, as you're starting out in your career, the best advice I ever got was to raise my hand and say, pick me for this. Pick me for this assignment. Pick me for this opportunity. Even if it's something that doesn't 100% interest you, do it, because then they'll come back to you. The decision makers will come back to you time and time again. because they see you as an eager person who wants to do more. It was really good advice for me. And, you know, I can name a couple of things in my career that really were a difference maker because I raised my hand. I would say also understand, you know, knowing what I know now, understand that it's not all about you, which is really hard for us to do sometimes because, you know, we get into this business for the greater good. I heard, you know, Robin talked about it quite a bit, but sometimes we take things way too personally. You know, decisions are made constantly, every single day, every single hour. And I would tell my younger self, you know what, don't take that so personally.
There was no straight line that took me from point A to where I am today. There are no clearly marked rungs on the ladder. In fact, some of the most important transitions and growth opportunities happen completely outside of the what we'd consider the typical construct of promotions and authority and titles and you know, a big team of direct reports. So that may be the most important point I hope to leave you with in our time today. Leadership isn't conveyed in titles. Anyone can exert leadership, even as an individual contributor in an organization early in your career. And often it's in those moments that others really will start to see your potential. And maybe, as was often the case for me, potential that you don't see for yourself, at least not yet. And opportunities for career advancement, for having greater impact and influence in your organization will then naturally start to occur. And that said, that there's another, I think, important point that I always try to share when talking to people about, you know, career journeys and career development, and that is never ever assume that others know what's important to you or what you're interested in. I remember being really early, yet in my own career as a mid-level editor in a local newsroom, and uh, you know, maybe had been in that role a couple of years, and one day it was announced that a colleague had been promoted into a role I didn't even know existed. It was newly created, and I remember thinking, well, now wait a minute, I would have loved to have that opportunity. I, you know, have a chance to apply for it. And what I learned from that is that ensuring that I was having regular conversations about longer term goals with my bosses was really, really important. And that, you know, really with that knowledge, they could help me achieve my goals. And the best ones would actually challenge my thinking about what my goals were or could be. Some of my best mentors over time really helped me to sort of redefine, rethink what was possible for me, and really widen the aperture of possibilities. So that's really, really important. It's just working hard to get to know people. People say build relationships. Well, that starts with getting to know them and understanding what's important to them and understanding, you know, what's meaningful to them and what resonates and all of that. So putting in that work, I think, was incredibly important and did ultimately help me to stay very connected to the things that matter. I think it's just important to stick to your guns. And I know that's a lot easier said than done. I get that, but it does take, going back to, you know, practice. You know, we become what we practice. I think it's really important that we not lose sight of that. That the first time is going to be hard, and the second time will be less hard. It's also important that we not be in it alone. The power of allyship is real, and we have to model for others what we need for ourselves. And so when we see, because we all do, when we see that exchange happen, and someone who's trying to make a valuable contribution or offer an observation or share an idea is sort of summarily dismissed, as, you know, it's not your lane. I think it's really important for those of us bearing witness to step in, step up and step in, and reinforce the idea, push back gently or otherwise on the idea that someone from a different lane can't have a great contribution to the greater good. And so that's what I would say is we should model what we hope to have for ourselves. And I think we hopefully create momentum around that. I've seen that, I've felt that, I've experienced that, and I think it's important that we never lose sight of that.